Yes, perfect. Thank you. I will indeed start the meeting and welcome all members and any public present to Warwickshire County Council second virtual cabinet meeting, and on today's date, the 11th of June. I'd like to just before we start the meeting, there are a couple of things that I would like to say. Firstly, this is the first meeting that we have had, public meeting, I think, that we have had of the cabinet since we heard the very sad news of the loss of one of our fellow colleagues, Councillor Bill Olner, and we feel that very greatly. I know he was a great friend and a great support to many of us in our council. He has had such a wealth of experience in the public sector, having been for, I think it was 18 years, MP for Nuneaton, and also, being on the council for the last, let me just think, I'm trying to think how long it is. I think it's coming up for 8 years. So a really wealth of experience. And he, despite cross-party, he actually was a friend to all, and I think we should like to just spare a minute to say our thanks for the life of our colleague, Councillor Bill Olner. Can we have a minute's silence, please? I think we will move on now. Thank you. And moving to the agenda before us, can I ask for apologies, please? I have not received any, but I do know that Councillor Richard Chataway is not with us today. Is due to health reasons, and I know he's been suffering for some time, and as a result he won't be joining us today, and I think he has been substituted by Helen Adkins and Maggie O'Rourke, so we welcome them and wish Richard our big thoughts and hope he's doing well. So thank you for that. May I also ask now for, as I've got no other apologies, Paul, I don't think you've got any, have you?
No, Chair, none received by me.
Thank you. May I ask for any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests, please? I see none and no hands, so I will assume that there are no interests to declare. Thank you. Moving on to the minutes of the previous meeting, and they are on pages 5 to 8. I am not going to go through them in the normal manner, but I would ask that we just agree those minutes, and I will take it as agreement unless I see any hands up or any points to the contrary. Which I do not, and thank you for those approvals, including myself. I approve those minutes. Can I then take us on to agenda item 2, which is the paper. This is a paper, COVID-19 Recovery and Reform, which I am presenting myself. I want to just say that there are a suite of papers here in connection with coronavirus and now moving into our recovery stage. The next 3 papers, this one and the 2 following, are all absolutely intrinsically connected. And I welcome the work that's gone on to establish these papers. So just moving into the paper, the background and the context on it, which is in section 1, clearly this has been a significant period in Warwickshire County Council and arguably the country's time. We have responded to support our residents as a unit, along with our colleagues in districts and borough councils. It's been an enormously active time, and I have to commend officers who have moved swiftly to change the way of working, help us and support us in our role, and also to establish not only our response period, but now as we move into recovery. And I move back on to item 2, which is the recovery framework that you see before you. In 2.2, that it shows in a nutshell the principles and the objectives that we take forward. And in the in 2.4, it shows how we fit in with the various national, regional, and county spatial aspects of this. I think it's really helpful to consider the phasing process, that the first 3 months, which is our foundation phase, these 3 to 9 months, which is our consolidation phase, and then acceleration moving on beyond that. Really important. And then I want to move particularly on to and spend some time on 2.6, which is how we work, looking at the change of portfolios, how we theme those around place, economy and climate, community and voluntary sector, health, well-being and social care, and organisation. And within that, we include the reinstatement of services, which people may want to talk about. These are going to be cabinet working groups. It's a very long time, I think, if ever, since we actually had cabinet working groups. And I value the input from members of the organisation, members of the council, in coming forward and volunteering to help and support these 4 working groups in their role around how we as an organisation step up in response to recovery for Warwickshire. That's all set out in item 2.6.3, and it goes further into talking about it. I don't especially want to go through the whole process, but I know that there will be people who want to talk about it. In particular, I've got Jerry Roodhouse at the moment, who has indicated, and I'm happy to support the new way of working. We'll recommend that to Cabinet. I think it's a really significant change and a way of engaging people with particular interests. There was an earlier question I want to pick up on, and that was how and where fire fits into this, and this will be in the community and voluntary sector. So without further discussion, I'd like to open this out, starting with Jerry, please.
Yes, thanks for that. Can I echo your comments about Bill? Very long-standing councillor, knew him as an MP, and a very sad loss to the county council and to the community that he represented. And through Helen and the Labour group, can you send our wishes to Richard at this difficult time as well? Moving to the papers that are presented today, I totally agree that this is a suite of papers. The 3 items come together really, and they follow in. So I might drift into some of the next couple of items to get it all over and done with at once. Broadly, we support this. I think one of the key issues will be about the pace and how this is delivered and developed going forward to that. And can I thank you for the conversation that we had around this, and to Rob Powell for also explaining it in a bit more detail. Certainly the busy map that links up to the West Midlands Combined Authority, Coventry Warwickshire Local Enterprise Partnership, District and Boroughs as well. And I think it is a case now of actually, can we get elected members onto these working groups? I know they're going to be chaired by portfolio holders, but we need to sort of move and get the recovery programmes up and running as quickly as possible. And of course, that's especially in light as well now with the schools announcements and education. The really big concern I have is about skills and the future. We're potentially losing a whole generation of people on this. And we need to see if we can actually gain some greater investment into this particular area, certainly through the summer as we go forward. And also the gaps around poverty and that we can see in the emergence there. And I would also commend back actually that we do revisit the child poverty strategy and have a look at that again, because that did cover a lot of the subjects that are in this paper at the same time. So I presume, is it that once these papers go through, you'll be looking for names from groups as quickly as possible?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jerry. Yes, I think the essence of the timescale that we have is that we want these groups to work particularly during the months running up to the end of July. In particular, clearly they will find their own rhythm and they will find their pace as well. But the anticipation is that we will be bringing forward the outcomes and the proposals to September Cabinet, which is quite an ask of the groups. But getting pods on seats will be one of the key things, and the importance is getting people who are particularly engaged with the areas that they want to be involved in. Looking at the hands, I've got Maggie O'Rourke and then Cam Core. Maggie, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Can you see me?
I could, but I can't at the moment. I saw you were right. Never mind.
Okay. Thank you very much, and thank you all for your very kind words, and in terms of Bill, who we all miss very much, and I know Helen will respond, so thank you for that. Really echoing most of what Jerry said already in terms of the link between all of those reports is really crucial, and a big thanks to all the officers, because they have gone way beyond, what most people would have to do, working long hours every day and producing all of these reports and getting lots of things up and running across our communities. So I think it's important that we know that there has been a lot of work there, and they've not had a lot of time to actually do all of this work because the guidance has been coming thick and fast. Our group broadly supports the reports as well, like the Lib Dems. There are some things in there that obviously I think we need to probably give a bit more thought to than others. I know obviously the finances and getting the economy going is really important, but I am particularly concerned around some of the health and wellbeing issues, as you probably expect me to be concerned. And after listening to some of the news headlines in the last few days about the growing sort of pressures on our waiting list, I am really concerned about this, and I know we're into recovery, and I know that we'll be looking at it. But should we have a second spike, I hope we will develop plans that will ensure that we don't have to close so many services down again, and so many people that will be suffering with cancer might be waiting a long time. So I know it's recovery, but it could be a response plan as well in terms of a possibility. You know, I don't want to be sort of really gloomy about it. I pray to God it doesn't happen, but there is a possibility that there could be a second peak. So I do think this is it's not just recovery, it's response as well in terms of how we might manage things differently should there be a second peak in terms of our hospital services. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Absolutely, those would be the themes that I think the four individual boards will be trying to adapt to. And I think clearly it looks as if you may be particularly interested in the health and care one. So it might be that would be an input you can put forward. Councillor Cam Core, followed by Councillor Helen Adkins, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things that Jerry has mentioned. Certainly, Appendix B, which is for those who are looking at the map, it's page 16, map of regional, county and local recovery groups. When I first saw this, it was literally blew my mind. And if anybody else is looking at this, they'd think, how on earth are we working with so many different organisations? It goes to show just how we are working in partnership and how we are working in, to connect with all our districts, our boroughs, our sub-region levels in terms of West Midlands Combined Authority. Yeah. It's a lot of work that's going on behind the scenes and what's sitting behind this paper. The other thing I wanted to just quickly mention, if I may, through you, Chair, is the timeline. We not only have the officers worked at pace, we need to, as councillors, work at a pace too, in order to make sure that we are in recovery phase. I know that following on from what Maggie O'Rourke, Councillor O'Rourke has just said, in case there is a second blip, i.e. a COVID blip to us, then we are ready and able to respond to that again. Notwithstanding all the work that the officers and all our staff have done, they have been absolutely fantastic in working from home, picking up the new technology and all of that. So a big thank you to them. But I just wanted to pick on those points that Jerry had mentioned through you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Move to Councillor Helen Adkins, please.
Thank you, Izzy. And thanks to everybody for passing on your condolences in relation to Bill, who was a much loved and much missed member of our group. And he had an amazing life, an amazing political career, and he could tell some fantastic stories about his time in Parliament. And I could sit and listen to him about the Blair years for forever and ever, which is great. In relation to Richard, I will also pass on your best wishes to him as well when I next speak to him. And just to say that thank you to the officers for the report that we're looking at today, and we look forward as a Labour group to taking our part in those roles. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so really moving on to the recommendations that we have got, I just want to draw everyone's attention to really the four agendas that we've got, which pretty much capture the whole thing. It's the timeline, the work areas, and how they are going to be used forward. So I'm going back to the item of the page 9, which is the 5 items that we have got down as recommendations. And without wishing to go through them all, because I think it will take too much time and I'll assume you've read them, can I ask for your approval to agenda item 2, please? I'll take a moment for that to come through, and those will go through on the chat. Thank you very much, everyone. And as those come through, I will move us on to the next paper, which is, as I say, they are a suite of papers. And the next one is item 3. It's Warwickshire Place Shaping Programme. Move to Peter Bucklin for this one, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a paper that was in construction prior to the COVID crisis, but has kind of taken on a new form in terms of basically kind of addressing the COVID crisis in terms of the effect of the economy, county and Warwickshire as a whole in terms of welfare, education, you name it. This will encompass it. We're identifying all our assets in Warwickshire, and that's across the districts, boroughs, ourselves, and others who want to take part, and use them as a means by which we can raise money and also stimulate growth and opportunities to create a recovery plan for Warwickshire. We're also alluding to a Warwickshire Investment Fund. This is in kind of early stages of development because it, for obvious reasons, has to go through kind of a legal and constitutional scrutiny in terms of what we can and can't do in terms of lending to businesses in the forms of grants, even taking stakes in companies, etc. So once that all is put into place and the legal aspects of that is sorted out, there will be further details on the potential of that. But I'm hopeful that we can create a fund that we can basically kind of invest into the creation of jobs and opportunities in Warwickshire post-COVID. But the main structure of this is kind of looking at where we can kind of put our efforts in terms of creating businesses, create an environment for business to flourish, because without business, we haven't got jobs, and without jobs, we cannot pay in rateable values. So it is key to the recovery of Warwickshire. I'll draw your attention to the fact that I've done a LEP meeting the other week where it was drawn to our attention that they could be a potential of 100,000 job losses between us and Coventry, which is sobering to say the least. So we have to do kind of pull all the fingers out through this paper and all subsequent papers to create an atmosphere where business is seen to be flourishing in Warwickshire. But prior to this, there was a realisation that the strengths that made Warwickshire prior to COVID are still there. Yeah. And the paper that we've got before us at the moment will kind of take forward those risks, and by kind of joining in partnership with districts and boroughs, the LEP, and anybody else that wants to join in, we can make the most of what Warwickshire has to offer. The papers are quite easy to read. It's not long, and it has an enormous potential to basically kind of umbrella all the other kind of aspects of what we're going to do. And it links in with the council plan. It firmly links all what we're proposing in terms of financial economic recovery, and it's a good umbrella also that sits on the paper that was approved last cabinet with the property company that we wanted to put in place. That will sit under this as well. So I'm kind of happy to receive questions, but I'm quite excited for what this can offer and what can be done for job creation in Warwickshire and the recovery.
Thank you very much, Peter, for your introduction. I can at this point just confirm that item 2 was agreed unanimously. So moving on to those who want to come in and ask questions or make comments on this. Keith Condacor first. Councillor Condacor.
Thank you very much. Very interesting paper, and all the 3 papers tied together. But this one, I think, looks a lot at what's happening in 12 months' time, actually building our future and our recovery. I'm quite keen about a lot of the transport issues in this. I see actually lots of opportunity in our bid for funding electric buses, for example, and having quality bus corridors. Because if you're trying to get a place to be more active, have more young people live there and go up and down, say from Bedworth into the universities or from Warwick upwards, the quality bus corridor, electric buses, cycle routes and the knuckle scheme, those 3 together could actually be quite a thing to actually provide forward momentum for a place just when it needs it. and we have a lot of north-south connectivity problems. The single line through Kenilworth Station. A lot of the knuckle stuff hasn't happened yet, so I see it as a massive opportunity. And I think the electric bus stuff we're doing and the cycling stuff we're doing all complement into taking people in and out of the sort of longer distance spine provided by the knuckle trains. So I hope things are actually going to recover, but so much has been badly damaged. As Peter was saying about the jobs, patronage on the buses and the trains, all these things are all going to need to be recovered. And particularly for the buses where the fares and the structure has been quite awkward, I see a lot of this place shaping electric buses, quality bus networks as a positive. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Keith. I'm just looking to see if there's anyone else who wants to come in. There's no one indicating hands up, and there is no one on the chat box. So, Peter, may I go back to you, please?
Thank you, Chair. For Keith, yes, electric buses serves two purposes. One, connectivity, which is most important across the county in whatever form it takes. But with electric buses, it also serves another purpose. It's kind of highlighting that Warwickshire is a centre of activity in terms of electric development, vehicle development, and it serves in that purpose also, which it advertises Warwickshire as a centre for these sorts of excellences. So yeah, I agree with Keith. It's something that we'll be pursuing. But don't forget, we've got 5G, housing, sustainable transport, sustainability in terms of the climate change stuff. It's all put into this paper to kind of sustain economic recovery and growth in Warwickshire. So I take Keith's point. It's a small part of the package, but I'm keen to basically kind of highlight and advertise Warwickshire as a place of excellence to do business. And on that basis, I'd like to commend this to the Cabinet.
Thank you. Can I ask for your votes, please, to be listed, and that we're taking them now? Thanks very much, and thank you to all the officers who have produced these reports today, and the officers who are actually enabling this virtual cabinet meeting to take place. We're learning as we go and getting better, I hope. Right, those are coming in now. I think I can now say we have a unanimous agreement for agenda item 3. Moving on to the next item, which agenda 4 is COVID-19 economic recovery, and this is a paper that I'm going to introduce myself. I wanted to just say that going back to the initial comments that I had on the item 2, this has been a pretty devastating time for us as a council, for our residents, but in particular too, we have to recognise how challenging it has been for businesses. I think we could arguably say that in a way we do not yet know what the full impact of the COVID-19 is going to be on businesses. We are still in a situation where government support is there. There are a large number of people who are still furloughed, and until the end of furloughing, we will not quite fully know the impact of what that means for those who will lose jobs, or indeed businesses that might not continue in the future. But I think it is worth noting in the paper that over the last 10 years and since the last economic downturn that we had, Warwickshire has been a massively successful economy. And we believe that if we put the right ingredients in place, it will again have that element of success. We will need to learn new lessons. What will be a success? What will be in future? What will carry forward? There will be some different businesses that thrive, and we need to be there to help them to come forward. It's going to be a different world, and we need to be able to respond to that. This paper sets out the way that we will want to respond. So we have put this into three formats: a foundation, a consolidation, and acceleration, terms that you will have heard already today. And again, looking at the nine sort of sectors that we're looking at, the support to business, re-safety and reopening, enabling safe and welcome high streets, instilling confidence in residents, employees and businesses, assisting and supporting businesses to rebuild and secure their futures, promoting Warwickshire as a place that is good to visit and good to invest in, and supporting and enabling our residents into employment. I think a critical aspect that we will need to work on. And indeed, three more, creating a strong dynamic, high growth business base, embedding a low carbon focus across our economy, and investing in place shaping and new infrastructure to support the growth. These are the 9 elements that we are looking at, and the paper puts these forward. So I would present that to you and ask for comments. The first one I've got is Councillor Jerry Roothouse, please.
Thank you, Izzy. Yeah, again, as was mentioned at the beginning, it's a suite of papers coming together. On pages 36, 37, 38, 39, I suppose with technology we ought to find a way that we can display these to members of the public as well, really. I'm not sure if that's going to be possible, just so people know out there know what we're referring to. But I do have a little bit of concern at the back of my head that we've got quite a long list here. We've reconfigured some of the money on page 39 of the report as well, around as well. And I just wonder, actually, as we go through this process with the working groups, we should be sharpening that and reducing that in a way so it's more focused, because as you know, to try and get some pace and acceleration, it needs to be sort of on fewer items which are more focused, so we could get that done quickly. And that's the only sort of amber light, I suppose, I'm raising at this point in time. You know, it's one of those things as it unfurls. But I also note that luckily there's no change to climate change figures on there, 4 and 4. But I do have some concern that perhaps the list is just a shade too long and it needs sort of prioritising a little bit harder.
Thank you. I'm looking to see if there's anyone else coming in on this at the moment. Peter, can I ask you, there isn't a financial element to this around the refocusing of funds, and I wonder whether you might just respond on that to Jerry.
Yeah, we've moved some money across. I think 2.5 million to boost this fund and to take this forward. So I think the total amount of money made available now is £7 million. So it's adequately funded for the time being. But as I previously said in previous paper, that that's not, it's only just the start of it, and this is where we kind of get pump priming the economy, and we've got further ambitions in the future. But at the moment, we're more than adequately kind of funded by moving money across to this. So I'm quite happy with what we've done. But it takes on, I think it's just kind of scroll down back to where it was. It's on recommendation 3.
Yeah, thanks very much.
2.5 million indicative funding of allocation of place shaping and capital investment feasibility fund increases up to 7.5 million.
Yeah. So I see no one else. Jerry, I take your point there are perhaps it is a long list. I would like to firstly, before we decide that we're not going to take any of these forward, I would want to see the outcomes of those working groups and see how they can be utilised within them. I mean, if you spread those around the working groups, they may not be such a significant issue. I also recognise that some of them may need a great deal of work and support. Others may be relatively low-key and small. But at this point, these are issues that have been identified and we think are important in taking forward. I would rather have an overview through those working groups to make sure that we do cover the most important things rather than we lose them now. So I would suggest we take it through at that point. And so if I can now move to those recommendations that you have, that you have before you. You've got the three recommendations as on page 31. Can I ask for you to vote on that? This is item 4, I think it is now, item 4. Okay, and that, oh gosh, everyone's beaten me to it. I think I'm the last one in. So can I say item 4 has been agreed again unanimously. So I'll move us swiftly on. I'm just getting to the next item 5, which is on page 43 for those of you who are doing this. Over to you, Colin Hayfield. Councillor Hayfield, please.
Thank you,
This
Lena.
is the Send Change programme. Sorry, I should have said Send Change programme.
I hope everyone's got a chance to see this. It came out a little later than the rest of the agenda, but I hope you've all seen and read through it. And it's 2 recommendations. It's a big area, Send. This paper deals principally with the processes of change and our ambitions. The money side of it will come forward in a separate paper in July. So I don't really, I think I'm happy just to take questions on this, Leader, to see which direction people are interested in, because it's a big topic.
Okay. Thank you. I've got Councillor Helen Adkins, please, first. And then Jerry Roodhouse and then Jonathan Chilvers, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
So we welcome the report, but we've just got a couple of issues, really. The first relates to parental choice, in that we're trying to enable students to stay in mainstream schools as much as we can. Now, I realise that a lot of parents will welcome that, but there may be parents that also want to have the choice of having their child in a special school if that's what's the best thing for them. So if you could just fill us in, Colin, a little bit about that. Also, in relation to schools' capacities to deal with more SEND students, I do have a concern around that. Oh, I know that there is a backlog of the plans, the EHC plans, and that there will be more schools needing these. Will we be able to cope with the amount of plans that the schools will be able for? Thank you.
Thanks very much. Colin, I'm going to take all questions and then come back to you as usual, if that's okay. So I've got Jerry next, please.
Thanks. Yeah, Helen's touched partly on it, EHCP plans. I think growing backlog, but as we're going through this, I think we could see increasing amounts of work, not just with the EHCP plans, but that whole area of work, really. And that's again a concern. And really also trying to just seek assurances around involvement of groups, parents, and that sort of consultation and discussion element going forward, as Colin knows from the scars over the years around some of these subjects, that it's always worthwhile just hooking into some of these groups to test ideas and to see how things develop as it unrolls. We can look at these things in black and white and think that's a good strategy. It looks great to us, but actually when it starts unrolling, there are issues, really. So I'm just trying to seek some assurances that we will have some discussions and involvement with parents and the people that are using the service on a regular basis. And then the other point is just echoing my concerns about EHCP. And I look forward to the finance paper on DSG.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be an increasing gap as we go forward.
Indeed. Thank you. And the last one that I've got at the moment is Councillor Jonathan Chilvers, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I think this is obviously a hugely difficult and challenging area, and I'm really pleased that the Children's Young People and Families Overview and Scrutiny is looking at this on the 23rd of June, so in between these two cabinet meetings. So I think we're going to have a really good look at it then, because I think obviously there's huge areas of concern with the finance, but there's also just this big question of why this massive increase in need has and happened, and that the report, and particularly the report quoted from Empower that did the review, does look at some of that and about why some of that early intervention hasn't been done enough in recent years, and there's lots of reasons like funding cuts and things to do with that, and also why sort of some of the levels of funding are lower in the mainstream schools than neighbouring authorities, which Empower have also raised. There's lots and lots of issues to look at, and I've got a number of concerns which I think will come out at the overviewing scrutiny. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to Scrutiny for taking this on. I think it is, as you say, important that we have that. I've got Councillor Peter Butland now. Thank you.
Yeah, I must, in terms of financial costs, the SEND is a national issue, with costs having massive increase through the extension of the system to more age groups and raised expectations of parents and young adults. It's a pressure that we've had the ability to kind of abridge those gaps and subsidise them in the past, but we can no longer do that. It is illegal to do that without Ministry of State approval. So therefore, this is timely that we should kind of bring this paper forward to start and address those financial problems for the county council. But notwithstanding that, we should be lobbying the DSG and the government to basically kind of come up with a more long-term financial solution to this problem that is not unique to Warwickshire. It is across the whole country. So we're bearing in mind that this is we're not in a position where we cannot do anything and wait for the DSG to resolve it. We have to start and get on that road ourselves. So this is what this paper is about. Otherwise, we're going to have a massive black hole and not the ability to bridge it.
So I think, Colin, that is the last of the speakers and questioners. Can I go back to you to sum up and respond?
Thank you, Leader. And I thank all the councillors for their questions. Helen, parental choice, it's one of these complicated areas that you do try and give what assistance you can to parental choice, but it is important to try and match the setting with the needs of the pupil. And sometimes that can be effectively dealt with in mainstream schools, and sometimes it requires specialist provision. Within that, there's a level of confidence that parents might have that whether mainstream schools can cope with their child or not, or whether a specialist provision they think is required. Overall, more parents seem to try and want to keep their kids in a mainstream school if at all possible, and I think educationalists tend to think from a social and an educational point of view, children can often do best in a mainstream school setting. In terms of the EHC plans that both Helen and Jerry Roothouse raise, it is an ongoing challenge to keep on top of the educational healthcare plans, and it will be as time rolls on to effectively review them, because children's needs do change, and it is important not to see that that an educational healthcare plan is definitive for that child for its school career. There may well be a need to readjust. So that needs to be built into that, and that is a challenge. I agree that's a challenge, and Scrutiny might want to look a lot more carefully at that. In terms of the involvement of parents, Jerry, co-production has been a key to the way educational services in Warwickshire have progressed over the years, and the paper does, and I can't quote the exact point, but the paper does make reference to the fact that we will be looking for co-production with parents and carers and things as these develop. And I think we all want to refresh and broaden that co-production area. We've had to rely perhaps too heavily on a limited number of people in the past on this, and it's probably a good time to refresh that and extend that. Jonathan, Yes, I agree. Overview and scrutiny will offer a far broader opportunity to investigate some of these things that we can deal with in the few minutes here. And we can perhaps touch on the money there, because although the money isn't ready for cabinet decision, it's clearly crucial to understanding how this service can cope and the direction it will take. Empower does talk about the levels of early intervention, and it's like public health and everything and healthcare stuff. Early intervention is often seen to be the way forward, but it always struggles for resources because and this will be a time when we will be having to manage the resources we've got as carefully as we can. And it does depend sometimes whether mainstream schools, how inclusive they are by nature. Some head teachers are really keen to see their school to be as inclusive as possible. Other head teachers, for other host of reasons, find that more challenging. And we need to understand and iron out some of the difficulties on that. Peter's entirely right to talk about resources, the fact that we are not alone in this. But in an area where demand is growing and the cost for the skilled interventions is growing, it is very difficult to meet our statutory responsibilities and do the best we can for each child at the same time at the moment. And we will be making representations to various government ministers to try and urge them to take positive action on that. And so, Leader, with that, I would ask that Cabinet endorse the 2 recommendations in the paper, please.
Thank you very much. We're voting now on item 5, and if you could place your vote. Thank you. Just having a little look. I think again we have we can agree item 5, the send change programme, the 2 recommendations as you have put. Thank you very much. Move on to agenda item 6. This is with Councillor Jeff Clark, the delegated budget scheme, COVID response and long-term scheme proposals. Thank you, Jeff. You're on mute.
I think you're getting to the right place. I'm trying to unmute. Sorry, thank you, Leader. Apologies for that. Yes, it's quite a poignant paper to come to Cabinet today, insofar as this was actually raised at full council by Councillor Bill Olner, and hopefully we'll have some support for this as we move forward. I think we've had a lot of investigation via members who have taken part in a cross-party scrutiny working group, which was held in the summer of 2019. There's been a number of changes proposed within the delegated budget schemes to put forward, which hopefully will provide better access for members to information about the status of their works they've requested, which have provided also a single point of contact, which has been another issue that members raised. And
sorry, apologies.
Okay. And also to see that a higher percentage of the delegated members' delegated budgets are actually delivered in year, which has been or was one of the main areas of concern and one of the reasons why this paper has been brought forward today. The changes identified in the report include the refocusing of the delegated budgets towards highway maintenance activities that can be delivered within a year. As I say, the highways locality officer will have a responsibility for managing those budgets, so the members will have a face-to-face location and opportunity to discuss any proposals. Removal of the £6,000 de minimum of the scheme, an introduction to get these schemes put in place early in the year so that we're able to deliver them within year. And also there's possibility to introduce a match funding to put some money into capital budgets or to support capital funding to come forward to deliver larger schemes. There's also an opportunity to develop the website or a website so that members can follow the progress of their schemes that they've got scheduled. I'm happy to try and to take questions, or what I should say, Leader, is this would be implemented during the year 2021-22, whilst there'll be a transition during this period. Yeah. And also to ensure that members are fully informed, during this year there will be a further workshop so that we can advise of the rolling out of the programme and how it will work. I'm happy to take questions, Leader.
Yep. Okay, thank you. I've got two so far. I've got Councillor Keith Condacor, followed by Councillor Helen Adkins. Keith, you first.
Thank you very much, Chair. A lot of this is highly welcome. There's a few things on the list, though, that you think, well, this is just maintenance, like cleaning road signs. And if cleaning road signs is in each councillor's delegated budget, I feel they won't get done, because obviously the people in my ward know where places are. So I think cleaning road signs is a structural type of thing we should be doing, and maybe we should have a great road sign clean after the COVID. There is a problem with large schemes. I've been trying to get a crossing in for the whole of my 8 years as a county councillor, so I do think we need to do more to actually get those in. And because they're delegated budgets, I think where the community does want a crossing, we should actually be able to get one a lot easier. But I am welcoming a lot of the changes, because things have dragged on for years, and you, under the old scheme, you're never quite sure if what things you ask for will happen or when they happen. Finally, on the list of things that councillors can ask for, I think we need a few more sustainable things. A bit of cycling infrastructure, cycle stands by shops, things like that, but also bus shelters. I managed to get 2 bus shelters for my delegated scheme, and they're incredibly popular. So I think some of the sustainable travel stuff needs to really be put in that list, because they're the sort of things that people want, particularly some of the older people standing on one of my streets. Yeah, a bus shelter makes a difference between them using a bus service or staying at home and not getting out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Keith. I'm moving to Helen Adkins now.
Thanks, and we welcome the report. It's very detailed, very good. Just a question, Jeff. I don't know whether you can answer this today for me, but how are we going to catch up in terms of, we've fallen behind with a lot of the delegated budget schemes during COVID for understandable reasons. How are we going to catch up, and will we have one person that we can perhaps go to that can, is going to be in charge of catching up, really? I know I've got a number of schemes ready to go, and I'm sure the members have as well.
Thank you for that. I've got nobody else, Jeff. I think back to you, please.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. And I'll go to Keith first in relation to a couple of the queries he had with that, and I welcome the support that he's got there. Yeah, I mean, the cleaning, actually, it's the replacement of signs rather than actually cleaning of signs. It's the replacement where signs have been damaged or members feel signs should be put in. So there's an opportunity there for putting signs where needed and where they work. In relation to the crossing, yes, I've been working with him on that, and I understand his frustration in relation to the delays in delivering that. It's been part of a development scheme, and concerns around children's crossings are obviously important to make sure we get them in, and we get them in the right place as soon as possible. Cycling, yes, we need to try and address more in relation to how we can help with the delivery of more cycling schemes, and members we could possibly look to including that within the list of options where members may want to spend their budgets. And also bus shelters. Yeah, I mean, our view is my budget previously for bus shelters, so that's still an opportunity within the programme. Helen, yeah, we will have a member for each area of the county, which will normally be your area transport officer, who will be responsible for the delegated budgets within your area, and that will be a one-to-one with each of the members, or with joint membership if there's more than one involved in a programme. So, I mean, it is a quite extensive programme that we're looking to achieve here, and hopefully, as we move forward this year. Oh, the other point you mentioned about catching up, sorry, I missed that. We are working with Balfour Beatty, our contractors, to ensure that we try and do as much of the works as we possibly can with the time that we've got. Obviously, we're doing weather sensitive works as soon as possible where that's able, and other works will be reprogrammed as we move through the year, but we will try and catch up as much as we can in relation to any outstanding issues. Obviously, we perhaps won't catch them all, but there is an intention to try and achieve as much as we can. As I say, that covers most of it, Leader. I'm happy to move the recommendations as set out for implementation within changes for the next year within 2021-2022. Move that recommendation, if I may, Chair. I've lost the leader.
That's careless. Okay, item 6, if you can vote now, and
You pressed the muted button.
sorry, I got lost again, didn't I? I didn't press anything, actually. It just suddenly decided to mute itself. The next thing is back, so that item 6 is agreed, and I'll move back to you, Jeff, for the next item, which is Historic Bridges Maintenance Programme, item 7.
Thank you again, Leader. Yes, an exciting one, this, insofar as we've achieved budget funding from government in relation to the Historic Bridge Maintenance Programme. 4.978 million has been given to Warwickshire County Council. That, together with our own funding bid of 1.322 million, gives us 6.3 million, and hopefully will enable us to deliver a number of bridge projects around 8 projects over the next 3 years. So it's quite an exciting time, which will hopefully help save and restore our historic bridges and maintain our highway network. So I'd move the recommendations as set out in the paper. Chair, if there's any questions, I'm happy to try and answer those.
Yep, I'm looking to see there don't appear to be a wealth of hands there, or even comments. No, I think what I would just say is fantastic. Well done, our team. They've done a really good job, got a great bid in, and helped to preserve our historic county, which is very good news. So thank you for that. Can we move to the vote then? So this is item 7.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. And again, that's going through. That is agreed. Moving on then to the next item on the Cabinet agenda is agenda item 8. It's the 2019-20 financial outturn report. Over to you, Peter Butland.
Thank you, Chair. I must congratulate the officers. They get slicker and better in presenting these reports each time they're done. I remember when I first started, they used to be kind of thick documents that you had to wade through and people's we're kind of intended to kind of avoid a lot of them.
In the background.
This is a good report. I must draw your attention to the fact that we've got an overall underspend of 14.2 million, which is an increase of 5 million from what was reported in quarter three. The main shift from quarter three is an over reduction of the overspend in communities of 1.8, which is positive, and an increase in the corporate services and resources underspend of 4.3, offset by the combined 1.1 million reduced underspend in the people and resources. The other items that I'll draw your attention to are as follows. Three main directorates. In total, the overspend was 4.5 million, which is positively within the 2% variation, which is acceptable. The education overspend is a mix of direct schools grant overspend of 3.8 million, which directly links to the earlier sandpaper, which we kind of just talked about. In addition, there is a 5.4 million overspend in Warwickshire County Council funded education services, mainly linked to the home to schools transport SEND costs, also previously talked about. And the main reason for the underspend through is corporate services and resources, which is 18.5 million, which is an area we are focusing energy on for 2020-21. We understand how to avoid this moving forward. But the main reason for the underspend is most significant is reduced cost of financing capital as interest rates keep dropping, and also some of the things that we're not actually borrowing for that we originally intended. It's had a significant effect on our underspend. So that's the main reason there. There is the secondary of essential underspend was greater than anticipated levels of government grant than budgeted for in several areas. We are exploring our estimation practices to understand if this can be limited in future years. The capital excursion on section 5 shows an overall underspend of 31.4, but I must point to the fact that 14 million of that slippage is linked to section 278 developer funded and led schemes, which the council has very little control over. But the original underspend is reducing, and we're kind of doing our damnedest to control it. But bearing in mind now we're into COVID, a lot of that slippage, and I hope to section that out because a lot of those schemes have been on hold. So when we kind of report next time, hopefully we'll kind of section out with the slippage that has occurred because of COVID, as opposed to our inability to deliver on certain projects. The reserves position in section 6 is key to understanding the context of COVID-19. The funding currently falls short of fully funding our additional costs of COVID-19, so the reserves will be critical to fund the shortfall in 2021. And finally, the officer recommendations agree all carry forward requests of 4.1 million. So I'd ask Cabinet for any issues, but by exception, they have with request on Appendix O. So that is fundamentally what was involved in this report. But overall, all things considered, in normal rules, if he was going to put a school report on this, improving but could do better. But because of the fact that we're in COVID, actually that underspend is going to kind of work out rather well for us. It gives us a lot more flexibility to kind of deal with pressures that are going to come because of COVID. So actually, it's played well for us financially, and I'm willing to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Peter. I've got Keith first. Keith Condicle.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for bringing up, Peter, the issue of separating out the stuff affected by COVID, because we've got a lot of capital projects, some of which aren't ours, they're doing developer stuff, some of which will never happen. And there's also been an issue, I think, with accounting. If you spend some money on capital schemes and they never happen, they then change into revenue and things. So I do think we need a paper or something to sort out the mess once we know where we are, and potentially look at what schemes we want to stop. And I know Peter will disagree, but things like the Bermuda Bridge project, which is on the stalled project every time needs to actually be chucked into the long grass or converted to an electric bus route. Also interesting on there is the bit about converting telephony to the Microsoft Teams, and that's obviously something we're running behind on in this report. And now suddenly we've done a year's work in about 2 or 3 weeks, but it has been very successful moving over to not using telephones. The one thing we haven't done is got rid of all the phone numbers on a lot of our emails and things that don't work. And finally, I know it's in this year's financial thing, but the money for reallocating road space, which I think we've got a government grant for, we need to watch out what happens for schemes that don't happen. Some of them have been in the long grass, and there's been lots of arguments about whether they should happen or not. So I think we do need to sort of work through and try and get the money we have got allocated for the road space reallocation actually spent, so we don't need to give it back. Thank you very much.
And of course, on that last point, there's a very clear criteria on what we're spending that for, which is around ensuring that we have the ability to safely allow people to return to the high streets and to reopen the businesses within that in a safer way and as confident a manner for our residents as they return to shops. So, and those I know officers are working day and night on at the moment. Peter, I haven't actually got anyone else coming in on this, so back to you.
Well, thank you for that. The reallocation of road space is actually separately funded, and bearing in mind that those schemes have got sunset clauses in them. In effect, they're on temporary TROs and will basically kind of finish in 18 months max. It is my sincere hope that most of them will finish in 12 months. I'm always optimistic that the COVID crisis will disappear quicker than most people think. Also, I've made sure that some of the lessons learnt from these reallocation of road spaces in terms of monitoring the usage of the roads, in terms of foot usage, cycle usage, and also the usage of the space freed up will be kind of monitored and taken back and fed into other schemes in the future. There's always a lot to be learnt when you kind of alter things and see how people react. In terms of kind of shelving some of the schemes, well, it is my sincere hope that kind of the Bermuda connectivity scheme, as you might expect, will go ahead. But I don't know of any schemes that we're going to shelve at the moment. So it's just a matter of reallocating where they're going to be and make sure the resources are there to actually do them and implement them. I think I've answered all the questions there. And I would like to go for approval of the Cabinet on this paper, please, or note the recommendations.
You're on mute again.
Sorry. Thank you, Mike. By the way, Mike, it's lovely to see you. Can I just say we've got 4 notes and 1 approval on the recommendations. So can we note and approve those recommendations as printed, please? And we're voting now. So I'm just seeing recommendation 8 is agreed. Thank you. Sticking with you, Peter, because the next item is the Treasury Management paper, please. The outturn for 1920. Now it's your turn to be on mute.
Unmuted. Thank you, Chair. The overall cash balance is increased by 15.2 million in 2019-20, and this is mainly due to the advance payment of government grants like COVID-19 first tranche of 14 million. Just a note here. This is a spot in time. We've actually spent that money since then. This was a kind of a photo of the situation at the time of the end of the financial year. And as you know, we've spent that and a bit more. So any reassure people watching that we're not sitting on money that was allocated for COVID. We've also moved money around to make sure from the money around so it's more liquid and available to us in terms of dealing with the crisis. And I have to thank the officers for kind of doing all this work, because it proves invaluable in terms of being able to kind of quickly respond to anything that's thrown at us because of the crisis. The other aspect of this is the reduction of interest rates. It's now down to 0.1%. This has an effect on our income in terms of those investments, but we're still kind of performing slightly above what we kind of budgeted anyway. But it's certainly going to have an impact on us in the future. The other aspect of this is in terms of Public Works Loan Board, we have currently quite a lot of our debt at 4.9%, and we are now lobbying central government to see if we can we'd love to flip that over into the new debt, where the current interest rate is below 3%. I think it's 2.3. But at the moment, the penalties by flipping are such they're prohibitive and would benefit us. But if government would skip those penalties, then we could take advantage of the new interest rates. And there is a lobbying exercise going on to do that. Other than that, the paper is as I've read, and I'm willing to take questions.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, I've got Keith Condacore.
Just a quick one. I noticed we've got about 10 or 11 million pounds in the property fund on the list. Has that been massively hit from what's been going on the high street, or is it not that sort of property? Thank you.
Back to you.
As I believe it's not that sort of property, Keith. No.
Yeah. No other questions then. So can we please vote on? I think this is item 9, isn't it, Peter? Yeah. So thank you all for being very speedy. And is item 9 agreed? So thank you very much for that. That is the last item of our agenda, and I would just like to say thank you all very much for attending and for being very clever, often a bit quicker than me, and also to those who have watched online too. Thank you very much.
You're muted again.
You're muted, Izzy.
Do you know, today I have got a cough, and I'm trying not to make that online. So, and it's just a tickle. It's just hay fevery cough, so nothing to worry about. But thank you all for coming. Thank the public of attending as well, and I hope to very much that we will see you again. And for those members who are watching, can I wish you well? And if Richard's watching, we all wish you very well. Thank you.
Councillor Second.
Yes.
Councillor Morgan had his hand up.
He did. You're absolutely right.
Councillor
Morgan, would you like to say whatever it is?
Hi, Izzy. I wonder if I could just steal a couple of seconds of our time to tell people that we finally had a delivery of the laptops and networking equipment for vulnerable families. 22 pallets.
Yes, I heard. Yes, that's very good.
Have arrived a couple of days ago. They have all been allocated. We're starting to distribute them, and we're asking the DFE for 140 more for young carers. I just thought people would like to know that. Forgive me for stealing a bit of time.
Yeah. Okay. That's lovely to hear. Thank you very much, and good news. Thank you all very much for attending Cabinet. I know we've got Cabinet Corporate Board. We're slightly overrunning. Can we just give it 5 minutes and join in then? Thanks a lot. Bye, folks. Bye.
Bye.